Welcome, everyone. It's so great to see your wonderful faces connecting and celebrating being back together again. It's been a long time, and it's been a hard time, but tonight is going to be very joyous. My name is Kathleen Driscoll, and I have the honor of being the chair of this wonderful organization that we're all a part of. Before we start this evening, I just would like us to give some appreciation to the hardworking staff of AWP and our board of directors who have all volunteered their time. I knew they worked hard, but I've gotten to see behind the scenes, and it's just kind of astonishing what they accomplish under really challenging, what is that the euphemism, challenging times. Okay. So as we begin here, I want to welcome you to the 2022 conference. We're so happy to be in welcoming Philadelphia. We feel at home here. There's so many wonderful things to do and see, and they have wonderful facilities for our conference. And we also, as we begin, we would like to acknowledge the original peoples and the land on which this conference is being held. This meeting place currently sits on unceded Lenape land. We welcome our honored guests from all indigenous communities attending this conference, and we've reserved the front seat, VIP seating, for them. We want to extend a heartfelt thank you to the Indigenous Aboriginal American Writers Caucus and Shauna Osborne for guidance, advocacy, and for all the support that they've helped us with to recognize all Indigenous communities' participation in AWP and beyond in all of our arts, all of our culture. Now we want to welcome Rebecca Half-Lowry. Rebecca Half-Lowry is a citizen of the Delaware Tribe of Indians headquartered in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. She's an educator, social worker, poet, and Lenape feather weaver. Her creation, The Cape of a Matriarch, is displayed in the Lenape-Hoking exhibit at Brooklyn Public Library through April 2022. In partnership with tribes, she's developed a decolonial curriculum for elementary through college classrooms, focusing on indigenous worldviews, creative writing, and social emotional skills. Her anthology of poetry, Lenape Journeys, was publicly performed on Little Island in Manhattan last July, and she has a children's book forthcoming that's featuring lessons of feather weaving. It's now in development. We look forward to that. She serves on the advisory council of the Lenape Center. She's here with us virtually, and she's going to share a poem with us this evening.
I am a citizen of the Delaware Tribe of Indians, which is headquartered in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. We welcome you to Lenape-Hoking. I live in California with my family and work as a clinical social worker. I am also a poet, a curriculum developer for my husband's comics, an educator, and now a feather weaver. I recently created a turkey feather cape with the assistance of my mother-in-law, Sandra Lowry of the Yurok tribe. The cape is displayed at an exhibit at the Brooklyn Public Library through April 30th. The exhibit is called Lenape-Hoking. It's the first exhibit curated by a Lenape person on cultural arts of Lenape people in Lenape-Hoking. So I'm honored to be a part of that. The show is curated by Joe Baker. This first poem I'm going to share with you today is inspired by the process of learning how to weave feathers, getting to know the qualities of the feathers, and also after the cape was completed, I saw how Joe Baker assembled it in the exhibit, and that made quite an impression on me. Feather Cape returns. 1. What shells are to water, feathers are to air. like the lovely turkey feather, move in wind and water. Light sends waves of color, quiet collisions, radiation. What is bronze in morning will be blue by 3. 2. If feathers were integers, her back is broad. One size of infinity moves across, her back is broad. Tail feathers flip up and down in wind, her back is broad. Small plumage pairs up by sizing quill. Ratty feathers fall, mistakes cut out. Her spine pushes up like a quill. 3. A cape hung over a branch in Lenape-Hoking, raised by a strange wind, flew west across the expanse before landing on a cliff at Requa. The mouth of the Klamath River below pushed into the Pacific Ocean. Cape made a U-turn in that foggy breath, circumventing columns of mist, picked up Dentilium before traveling back east. Waiting, a line of bandolier bags. Feather Cape, they said, we saved you a spot. Rejoining their company, they spoke all night. This last poem I'm going to share with you was inspired by a trip I took last summer to Lenape-Hoking in the Hudson River Valley. I visited a cornfield, a project at the Lenape Center. The crops were grown from seeds rematriated from an elder who was a seed keeper for her family. The seeds, the bean seeds, the corn seeds had not been planted in Lenape soil for 300 years. So that was a powerful experience to visit that cornfield and be there. During my trip, I also encountered a historic document, which had me thinking quite a bit. This historic document contained imagery of the seal of New Amsterdam. The New Amsterdam was the term that the early Dutch colonists called our homeland. They renamed it for a while. That name does not apply anymore. In the imagery of the seal of New Amsterdam, there is a beaver right in the center. The beaver is encircled by a strand of wampum, and there is a crown on top. I call this poem The Seal of Lenape-Hoking. Beaver was not money. Beaver built a lodge, dove into the hole, retrieved clumps of mud, built earth on turtle's back. Land isn't sold, it is taken. Money isn't born, it is made. The seal of this land is not a crown. Whose your money? Not the shells of 1626 in the palms that snuffed out fire, communication from low points on the river to high points on the river. Our currency is fire. First stone, greet the stone by name and make friction. With your hands, with your thoughts. Fire follows. Use fire to move. Movement is currency. Use fire to feed. Sustainability is currency. Use fire to clear underbrush. Plant medicine is currency. A clear mind is currency. Allows you to lay out your stories one by one. Take the bean out of your sack and put it on the table. Our voices are currency. Spot each other like fireflies. In the quiet of dusk, when lines dissolve, in distance, we are close. Took our bodies and voices when we left Lenape-Hoking. return them today. In the darkness, build the lodge, braid a new seal from husks of harvest. Harvest is our home. The sisters returned, replanted along a singing creek, germination in warmth, stretching, releasing a taproot. What looks like a blade of grass is our grandmother, getting thicker, becoming stalk, sprouts tassels laden with pollen, extends silks that move in wind and receive. One kernel from each silk, each one carries her milk. Home is our harvest, carried home on our backs for generations, kept the sisters safe, shared the milk, brought them back. Reunion, ground waves up and down, increased rate of heart, pat the dirt, steady it, inhale deeper with each step, thump of feet keeps her calm, imprints a new seal. Friends are waiting. They help sharpen our teeth. Wanishi.
Beautiful, very beautiful. I'm going to move on through the program now, but I want to make sure that we properly thank Wilkes University. They've been such a marvelous sponsor for us in the past, a wonderful member, institutional member for our organization. They've been long involved with AWP, and they're always ready to lend their support to us, and we have great appreciation for that. I want to introduce to you now Philip Brady, who is a member of the Maslow Family Graduate School. He's a member of the faculty there, and he is teaching in the spoken word track, which I just think is so marvelous. He's a poet, an essayist, a teacher, an editor. He's the author of more than a half dozen books. Most recently, he's published the Elsewhere New and Selected Poems, and that's come out from Broadstone in 2020. So please help me welcome Philip to the stage.
Thank you, Colleen. That's very kind, and I think we're all delighted to be here. Wilkes is certainly delighted to have a part in this wonderful conference. We are in many places tonight. Some of us are here physically, and some are here virtually. So it's a special pleasure to introduce a poet whose lifetime work has brought so many people together. Co-founder of Cave Canem, Professor Emerita at the University of Pittsburgh, former Chancellor of the American Academy of Poets, and former founding member of the Wilkes Board of Advisors. Toi Derricotte's passion, brilliance, and energy has inspired such a wide range of readers and writers across cultures and generations that, as she writes, now I can almost touch the other side of my life. But for all her generous contributions to the world of poetry, we're here tonight to celebrate her inimitable voice, expressed in titles which range from natural birth to Empress of the Death House. For many decades, Toi Derricotte has provided fearless witness and healing to our cultural and national traumas. And yet she continues to make it real, to make it immediate, to make it present, to make it intimate, presenting the fist of a newborn. Toi has received many honors. She's the recipient of the 2020 Frost Medal from the Poetry Society of America and the 2021 Wallace Stevens Award from the Academy of American Poets. Her 6th collection of poetry, New and Selected Poems, was shortlisted for the 2019 National Book Award. Her literary memoir, The Black Notebooks, was the Anisfield-Wolf Book Award for nonfiction and was a New York Times Notable Book of the Year. Her numerous literary awards include fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the National Endowment for the Arts. She was awarded a 2012 Paterson Poetry Prize for Sustained Literary Achievement, a Distinguished Pioneering Arts Award from the United Black Artists, the 2012 Penn Voelcker Award for Poetry, and the Lucille Medwick Memorial Award for the Poetry Society of America. Poems, Toi Derricotte reminds us, take the craziness and salvage some small, clear part of the soul. And that is why, she writes, though frightened, I don't stop the spirit. Please join me in welcoming the shining spirit and poet as the AWP 2022 keynote speaker. Thank you.
I love you, I love you. I love you guys. I really do. I really do. I mean, I know some of you I might not get along with, but it doesn't matter. I love you so much. Because when I was a baby, and my mom and my aunt were cooking in the kitchen, is this right? Do it. Pull it down. Okay, how's that? All right. And let me know if I'm yelling at you or... when my mom and my aunt were cooking, and I was barely able to walk, and I'd pull the chair over to the window, and I'd climb up on the chair. And we lived in a neighborhood that was kind of the first black middle-class neighborhood of Detroit. And so, you know, people would be walking by on their way to work or the bus or something, and I'd wait till I'd see somebody out there, and I'd start screaming, "Hi there, hi there," and I'd just be screaming out the window, and they would notice me, you know, and they'd wave back. But I realized recently I was looking for you guys. You know what I'm saying? I was already looking. I knew there was somebody out there that I'd be able to have a conversation with that I wasn't going to have with my family. I think I was like 18 months old. And I had already figured that out. And then I found you, and my life changed. Slowly, it changed because of you, because of what you do and what you love and who you trust and who you hate. Because you're not nice all the time. Let's face it. And that's another reason why I love you. Oh, God. Poets love to gossip, don't we? I'll see you afterwards. I have everything I need. I have water and Kleenex. Not exactly a reading. In the morning when I get up, I like to write. Since I have to write a speech for AWP, I'm the keynote next year. I even got a writing coach. It's not someone who critiques, she's not a poet, but someone I have to turn something into every Wednesday. I'm thinking by March 2022, I'll have 4 or 5 good pieces. The puzzling thing is that they told me that they don't want me to give a straight reading. It made me somewhat nervous. This year, the keynote was the poet laureate Joy Harjo. She has a band, and people sang and danced in the aisles. The chairs are all on the same level, and the rows are so long and deep that you don't see individual faces. It's as if you're giving a speech to people who don't have any individual responsibility to listen. And unlike theaters where the speaker can't see the audience, this is an ordinary room lit brightly. When I gave a reading in that room a few years ago, though I didn't see individual faces, I was very aware of how many times the exit doors banged shut. You say to yourself, I bet they didn't bang shut for Joy Harjo. Somebody said, oh God. Stephen Joseph used to say, they voted with their feet, but everyone here has a reading to do, a job interview, a presentation. We have to show a good face. Did you pass that powerful director of a creative writing program without waving hello? When Sheila asked me to do the keynote, I asked, me? Are you sure? Yes, she said, you're the one, we're sure. Then she said, not exactly a reading. So I want to thank Wilkes University for sponsoring my reading. This is such a great honor, and it's really changed me. I'm not kidding. When they asked me to do it, I just thought, I can't do this, you know? I'm too afraid. And guess what? I'm not afraid. I really changed. It really changed me. And I think if you do the things you're scared to do, you do change. So keep doing your work. The world is falling apart. And you're remaking it with the broken pieces of yourself. That's how you do it. And we're so important. And should I give you my advice early or wait till later? Early, okay. Then you can bang those doors anytime you want. The advice is this. Do the hard, I always told Cave Canem folks to write the hard poem. So do the hard work, do it. Do the hard work, go on, do it. That hard poem, write it. That hard essay, do it. Do the hard work. And then the other thing is, don't do the hard work. Stay in your house and do like this all day long and say, I love myself. I can say no. And I can take care of myself. I can protect myself. And if you do that, you'll learn how to trust yourself and feel safe. And that's how I feel right now. I've never felt that way at a reading. Isn't it amazing? So then I want to thank AWP, Sheila Black, Colleen Cable and her dad, Chris, who drove me here from Pittsburgh, and he furnished me with lots of Snickers bars and Milky Ways. We had a flat tire, though. But that was fun. We made it fun. And I I was at the AWP and all the staff and the board of AWP, they work so hard to do this, right? Let's give them applause. Yay, yay, yay. I was at one of the first conferences in Norfolk. How many here were there at one of the first conferences in the 80s? Yeah. There were like 100 people there. So a lot has changed since then. So, and then, of course, I've got to say thank you to my beloved Cave Canem. These are my blood, my sisters and brothers, my kids, my heart. Thank you for being here, for me, for doing your work. And whatever it is you're doing now, to love yourself, I am so grateful. I celebrate and cherish you. Would you stand up and let's applaud Cave Canem? I just will have to do it. These guys are doing a lot of work, so help them out. It's all about the love, right? So, joy is an act of resistance. Something I said that seemed to catch on. And I'll tell you how I came up with that. There's a place in Pittsburgh called City of Asylum, and exiled poets from other countries, people who have been imprisoned, come there and stay for a few years and are safe. Sometimes they come from countries where their friends have just been murdered. But there was the first poet that came there, his name was Hong Shong, and he was this marvelous man, and every time I'd see him, no matter where he was, he would radiate this tremendous joy and beauty, and it would be so large, it would be when he'd recite a poem or when he'd see you on the street. It just was encompassing him. And I'd never seen anything like that. And I always wondered, how did he do this? And I was at a cocktail party with some of the people who helped City of Asylum, and his dentist was there. And I was talking to his dentist, and he said, I had to remake his mouth because all of his teeth were pulled out by torture. And I said, joy is an act of resistance. It just came to me immediately. I thank you for your silence. You respect that, as I do, as I did. And when I say joy is an act of resistance, I mean, we're not going to let them kill us. We're not going to let them destroy our creative genius. You're geniuses, guys. You're geniuses. Don't let anybody take it away. And that's our great joy. That's why we love each other. That's why all of you come here together to get a little bit of that. And I'm all for it. Sonia Henney. I'm reading all of these new things that I wrote because I was going to be the speaker. And so then there's one old poem I'll read. Sonia Henney. There was a famous woman skater in my childhood, Sonia Henney, a 3-time gold medal Olympian figure skater. She became a Hollywood star. the first skater who went around the world performing in packed venues like Madison Square Garden, places that today host stars like Elton John and Billie Eilish. Parents took their children for a special Saturday outing, everyone dressed up, as if all the kids in America had awakened one morning and said to their parents, "The one thing you could do to make me so happy, I will forgive you for all your drunk beatings, is to take me to see Sonja Henie." Who thought this up? We knew our parents had to buy the tickets. They had to plan it to make us happy. We knew the tickets were out of their budgets. They had to bleed money. They had to suffer, which may have added to our happiness. For one night, we knew where our fathers were and what they were doing. How did the idea catch on so that every family in America that wanted to do something guaranteed by the people who promoted it to give their kids one night of joy? I remember being taken to the Ice Capades one year, and as I was watching them do their amazing swirls and leaps, I began to wonder why I wasn't feeling joy. Often I had to pretend with my parents that I was having fun, trying to make them happy, opening the presents my mother had wrapped on Christmas morning after the huge fight about the wounded Christmas tree my father, drunk, had arrived home with at midnight. So many presents that in the morning I'd step on them, blindfolded, screaming. Was it in fear or happiness? Already I was feeling that I didn't understand what I was supposed to feel. Were other children acting, or did they really feel something for Sonja Henie? What made them hang over the railings? What made them so serene in their rabbit skin collars, as if their fathers had never knocked their mother into the kitchen table, never beat them until they crawled along the floor begging? All seemed forgiven. The things that you might not ever in your whole life forgive them for. And if you still helped them when they were old and couldn't help themselves anymore, or called once a year on Christmas, you still kept in your heart a burning coal, just so that you would never forget what was done to you. Perhaps it was then, in that fork in the road where most people let go of pain, that I started to blur the paths that different feelings take. Perhaps I keep alive the little girl watching Sonja Henie swirl, make that scraping sound with her ice blades, kick up a little pile of dimmed ice behind her, and lift her leg. Who's hooting? You bitch. That's her book, is Burning Bitch. So I get to do that. I did that out in the hall, and several people turned around and looked at me. I hope they don't take me out of here before the doors start banging shut. Thank you, Rebecca. Meatloaf. Though I had received the gift of 3 dinners from friends, one having dropped off homemade chicken soup with rice, one chicken soup with cauliflower chopped up like rice, and one Mexican chili with corn and hot spices, I decided to cook the complicated meatloaf I found in an old cookbook I had been looking at for days. Coming out of Giant Eagle with the necessary ingredients, I stopped a woman coming in and called out, "Excuse me," and she turned around, her feet still moving toward the entrance, ready to disappear if I showed any signs of asking for bus fare. Will I or will I not cook the meatloaf that I had been planning to cook tonight? The trick to asking strangers questions is to ask a question that only a poet would ask. One one that begins in a world halfway between history and imagination. No, she shot back, still moving, a command like one would shout out to someone stepping into disaster, then calling a staccato note over her shoulder just before she disappeared. At least I wouldn't, not tonight. I felt guilty for stopping her. I had already made up my mind. The hamburger and sausage had been in the refrigerator for 2 or 3 days, and I feared they might spoil. But the recipe was the opposite of what I believe a meatloaf recipe should be, something delicious and easy. This one included 8 spices, whole nutmeg that had to be grated, and chopped vegetables that had to be sautéed separately in olive oil and rested for an hour in the refrigerator. Anybody made that meatloaf? If so, I want to talk to you after. It was almost 7 o'clock. I wonder if I am trying to prove to myself, the same way I have to keep writing to prove I'm still a writer, that I'm still a good cook. Though what they call a good cook at one time was a woman who cooked the best meatloaf by heart. Galway Kinnell, my terrifying, because he was such a great poet and so beautiful, teacher at NYU, made his students learn a new poem every week by heart. When we came to class, we had to write it, turn it in, and recite it to the class. He knew hundreds of poems by heart and believed that memorizing a poem made you take it in, to understand it as if you had written it yourself. And it was true. I remember writing lines over and over that after a while revealed their logic. When I recited it in class, I hadn't just learned the words, I learned the path the words took, which made the poem inevitable, like the one way out of a maze. After I cooked the meatloaf and ate several slices, it was pretty good, but not good enough to warrant all that work. And before I went to bed, I opened the refrigerator for yogurt and saw the container of resting chopped vegetables. Oh, God. I wish you'd been there at the time. I had forgotten to incorporate them when I was squeezing together the meat, spices, breadcrumbs, eggs, and cream. All that work for a meatloaf not as good as the slices I buy at the deli. I was disappointed and fearful. I don't believe I would have forgotten the vegetables in the refrigerator a year ago, or perhaps even a month ago. A good cook remembers the ingredients. Like poets remember even when they write the first word, there's a form waiting, as if it were vegetables in the refrigerator. Is growing old the opposite of the way a baby grows, every day changing so much that the parents can't keep up? When I told my dental hygienist the story, she said her doctor said that Alzheimer's isn't forgetting things, it's forgetting you forgot. As long as any fort in a storm, as long as you remember you forgot, you're all right, she said. I need you guys so bad. But it's useless. Oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute. As long as you remember you forgot, you're all right, she said. But it's useless to write the note to yourself that says, when you forget that you forgot why you went up the stairs, it's time to get out the gun. Because in order to get out the gun, you have to know where you hid it and why. Sounds like quite a few people have forgotten vegetables in the refrigerator, at least once. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a love story. You want to hear a love story? Cave Canem. You know it, right? So this is how it happens, because I think it's important to talk to you about trust. Because in this day, we're really losing it. So, okay. This is my great love story, Cave Canem is. And you know, trust is what keeps you writing when you don't know where you're going, right? You know what that feels like. You gotta let go. So we're not in charge in a huge way, and writers know this. But our fears are what lead us to trust. So it's ironic. Okay, so this is how Cave Canem started. I had an idea that I shared with people. Terrence is one person. My dear Terrence is here. He was my graduate assistant in '89, was it? And while he was a student, and we talked about it. And my friend, Father Francis Gargani, when I was teaching in Old Dominion. But I couldn't do it alone. I can't explain it to you why. I wanted to be the person who was in charge of the first workshop for African American poets. I had the idea, I didn't know. The problem was I didn't know how to get to the next place, the next footing. I knew what it was like, but I couldn't get to the next place to put my feet. And so that went on, and I was beating myself up because I thought, why can't you, blah, blah, blah. And, but it didn't happen. And we tried to get funding, we didn't get funding. So then I was at a workshop teaching in the summer one year, and it was the first time I met Cornelius and Sarah. And we had a good time together, you know. We just went out and talked all night. Cornelius has a great laugh, if you've ever heard him laugh. And one night we were going to dinner, and we were walking into dinner, and I noticed all of the white people on this side of the room and all of the black people on this side of the room. Ever seen a room like that? Yeah. And so my head started going like, oh God, where will I sit? The white people asked me to come and teach. And if I go over and sit with the black people, they'll wonder why I'm not sitting. And then the black people, if I don't, I was like high school, you know, high school. And I looked, and Cornelius and Sarah were walking straight for the black people. And I looked, and I instantly fell in love, just like that, and trusted. I knew these guys could take care of business. And that was how Cave Canem really started. That's when it really started, because that was where I could go next. You know, you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to be the genius and the star. You could just join with somebody else. And so this is how thing led on to thing. We went to Capri to vacation because we were just had so much fun together. And that was when we sat down at the table, and I asked them, you know, would you want to do this thing, blah, blah. Yeah, wow, yeah. And then I said, but where will we get the money? I had tried to get funding, and I couldn't get funding. And Sarah said, let's just do it out of our own pockets. You got it? It's the other person who gives back. But you got to trust. You got to put yourself out there, and you got to be naked and bare and terrified. And then it happens. And so Sarah said, let's do it out of our own pocket. So I said, well, where can we do it? And then I remembered Father Francis, my friend who I had talked to years before, and he was the retreat director at a monastery on the Hudson. So from Italy, we call Francis. Hey, Francis, can we bring some black poets up there next year to the monastery? He said, yeah, come on. So the next year, like, what was it, like 25, 30 poets at the monastery. All the Virgin Mary statues and the crosses. And we wondered if people would, like that. And Cave Canem loved that monastery. They had a great time. And also, I had done a reading at Chicago, and Afa Weaver and I were friends from Poets in the School in New Jersey. So I said to myself, what poets do I know that will come and teach for nothing? I think I'll call Elizabeth and Afa. Would you come up and spend a week for nothing? Yeah, sure, we're in. And that's how it happens. There are so many things that need doing, people. Am I right? There are so many things that need doing. You might not be able to do it alone. So find the people you trust. They're hard to find. But in your gut, you know it. You know it when you hook up. So I want to thank Cave Canem poets because they're the ones who are out there changing American poetry and changing people's hearts and minds. And it's still happening. Cave Canem is 25 years old, and our board president, yeah. Tayemba, Jess, and Lisa Willis, our ED. Yay! And our wonderful staff. I'm pouring water on the floor. I think I'll put that down. For my light skin, I can only be forgiven by Black people. For the million times I walked down the street and no one knew I was there, as if I were tiptoeing, as if I took myself back from existence. For the hundreds of times my mother and I walked the galleries at Hudson's, not a dark soul to be found. The furniture behind red ropes untouchable. For all the places she and I kept eating our sandwiches. My mother liked minestrone soup on the 13th floor where the white waitresses wore dull green dresses and caps. I always enjoyed a hot fudge sundae. Only Black people can judge me. Only they know the anguish inserted in history when some ancestor of mine took the place of one who went to the back. What was done made me. Only Black people can know who I loved most, for whom I have done good. It's a hard conversation, but one that has to happen. One that has to happen. A hard conversation with a white woman I love. And why shouldn't I throw a piece of raw nerve out over the void to one I've known all my life? I don't mean I've known her that long in the flesh. I mean known as in the eternity of the spirit, the way I know there's something even bigger than what I see when I look up from my coffee into the 20-degree weather and notice a robin with wind-ruffled feathers sitting on a branch. Then take a swallow of coffee, look up again and notice There are two, one on a lower branch that I hadn't noticed before. I sought to wonder if there are more rusty breasts that haven't pierced through my blindness. And sure enough, one on a branch to the right, one on a lower branch, and two on a branch almost touching my window, as if they were delicately placed to balance like a mobile. There are some people I recognize by their voices, as I recognized Billie Holiday when I was 14 as my kin. Ellen Bass was sitting next to me on a banquette at an AWP luncheon 20 years ago, and I happened to be able to bend slightly to my left and see straight through her glasses. How shiny the lenses were, so clear it seemed the world was without blemish, with little sparks like asterisks that blinked here and there. I can hardly see through my own glasses, smeared with face cream smudges, like fingerprints to get myself caught. But hers were so pure that they disappeared, and the world came so close you had to pay attention. What a fearless woman, I thought, to open that lens. I'm not sure, but I may have bent over at that very moment and told her I loved her, for I know I did right then and there choose her as my life partner. We're not bed lovers, not intended to be. Some matches are not meant to be touched, or perhaps not even meant to be in the same room with, the way I fear Billie may have hurt me too badly. But I'm counting on her to be there, waiting when I get to heaven, and we're all perfect. How I long for that. Count on it, to tell Billie face to face, my heart fully open, able to bear that pain, how much I love her, how her singing saved my life. Ellen and I speak on the phone about once a month. We make a date, write all that day, and then call each other in the evening and read what we wrote. That's what we're doing today, and I'll probably read her this tonight. One time, not long ago, I talked to her about a poem she had sent me about race. I told her I didn't want to comment on it. I told her another white poet had sent me a poem about race that very week and asked me to comment on it. And I felt used, as if finally race is a hot topic for white poets, though they hadn't been writing about it for 400 years. And now their black friends should give them the okay before they make a fool of themselves. I told Ellen, Ellen liked that line very much, by the way. I told Ellen that it made me angry that my white friends take it for granted that they can send me these poems, that they don't have any idea that sending them might bring up feelings that I don't want to deal with. It takes so much work to see their poems clearly, working through my issues with them as white people writing about black people, with my issues of having so many close friends who happen to be white. What's wrong with me? With the separations in language between us that so often I don't bring up because of the pain, as if one person is going to be right and the other wrong. I'll never be able to explain what happened in my brain and heart, or it would take hours, days, and then to listen to the other person say they don't understand. It's too painful to know that you're that distant from someone you love. So I just say to myself, white people can't be expected to know because they haven't lived in black skin. Their parents didn't live in black skin. And there are certain ways black people understand history in shorthand, feel the 100 layers under a word that rise into consciousness like a balloon. And the fact that she and other white people are writing about race, and I haven't been able to write things that are too hard, and I don't want to open up the sore that I hoped was healed when I finished the Black Notebooks. How many times have I taken the underlying stuff for granted so that the friendship goes on, the way I often push my personality heartlessly over a hurdle? And here my writing goes silent. I have no words. Ellen said she had no idea that she should have asked me before she sent the poems, had no idea I might be hurt or offended. And when I explained how hard it was to bring up my feelings, she could see that it wasn't just a matter of whether she had written a good poem. She understood and told me she was so sorry for not seeing and how grateful she was for knowing now. And when I told her how much I haven't been saying because it's just too hard to talk about, she told me she's not afraid of the things I need to tell her. She just doesn't want me to let go of our friendship. That's the main thing. She doesn't want me to leave her. Doesn't Ellen love me because I'm smart about her poems, or because she likes a lot of mine, or because I loved her dog Zeke so much, or because of something else, maybe something because of the time I bent over and peeked through her glasses and told her I loved her, and she knew at that moment I was daring and fragile. It's not just about race. It's about those moments when I am sharing a part of me that is still a stranger to me, when I don't know what will be said next, and it feels as though I've stepped off a high building, but I'm not falling, as if my differentness means I'm against her. I don't know what lies on the other side of speaking, as if the body is the coldest it can get before dying, and I want the moment to end, and I want it not to end. And though we're only on the phone, I want her to stay with me, though I don't know how long we can do it, as if we are teetering together, and I might pull her down. And more than anything, I want to know what it is I'm afraid of. I want to stay there exactly for one more instant if I can, because you won't know what you will say unless you bear it. Ellen does see the world without as much obfuscation as I do. She would have picked out those robins instantly. But what is hanging in the balance? And does she feel it? Does she perceive my fear? And does it make her sweat and want to say goodbye? And what is that absence, that nothingness that doesn't know what to do, like a child who, no matter which way she turns, it's the wrong way? Ellen read this and was so moved that she was crying. She said I had gotten the description of our conversation right, and that she laughed out loud at the part about me saying my white friends were saving my white friends from making a fool of themselves. She said she understood that I was writing close to the bone, something rare for its bearing, delicate, and that its wonder was its ability to show the preciousness of connection in spite of pain. And I dared to ask if she had ever had that terrible feeling of being stuck in nothing and not being able to help herself. And she said she could almost feel something in her life that reminded her of it, but she couldn't say it was the same. However, she said that she felt that sometimes when she had worked with people who were going through recovery after terrible abuse in childhood, she sometimes had the feeling that she was with them in that fragile and delicate place out of time, and that it was an indescribable experience of feeling aliveness. She also said that she could tell our friendship was getting even closer, because sometimes after two friends talk about something so frightening in their friendship, one or both of them step back. And she was afraid I might do that after our conversation. But now she feels that I stepped closer, and how much that means to her that I'm that kind of friend, how she loves me for that. How can I let go of what I know? Trust for 1 minute, a friend suggests. Just try it. Maybe at the end of 1 minute, you'll be okay. That's how I began to step out of the closed bullet, the armor, the glass casket. After many 1 minute trials, I saw that I was okay. And that's how I began walking out on nothing. Okay, I'm going to end in a few minutes, guys. I got just a few more poems. And, oh, wait a minute, I got to tell you something. You know, when I was afraid about making this speech last year, I know that was a hard thing to hear. I don't know. I think it was hard. So if you need to stand up or something? I don't know. Maybe I need to. So if you need to, stand up and stretch. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Sometimes I read something so hard, and I get stiff. Do you get stiff when you read something hard? Only at AWP can this happen. Oh, man. Well, it happens at Cave Canem, too. Okay, so now I'm going to read something from my book. And, I've written about all the really hard stuff, child abuse, molestation, self-loathing. And this is the hardest poem the scariest poem I've ever read to an audience. And you know what it is about? Yeah, Telly. And Cave Canem loves me to read about Telly. And so Telly is the fish I loved. And when I read this to, an academic audience and students waiting for these profound words, and I started reading about Telly the fish, there was a lot of silence. The Telly cycle. Joy is an act of resistance. Why would a black woman need a fish to love? Why did she need a flash of red living in the corner of her eye, as if she could love nothing up close, but had to step away from it, come back to drop a few seeds and let it grab onto her as if it caught her on some hook that couldn't hurt? Why did she need a fish to write of, a red thorn, or among the thorns, that flower? What does her love have to do with 500 years of sorrow, then joy coming up like a small breath, a bubble? What does it have to do with the graveyards of the Atlantic in her mother's heart? For Telly the fish. Oh, man, I'm out of water. For Telly the fish. Telly's favorite artist was Alice Neal. When he first came to my house, I propped up her bright yellow shade with open window and a vase of flowers postcard size behind his first fishbowl. I thought it might give him something to look at, like the center of a house you keep coming back to, a hearth, a root for your eye. It was a wondering in me that came up with that thought, a kind of empathy across my air and through his water, maybe the first word that I propped up between us in case he could hear. Telly would stare at that painting for hours, hanging there with his glassy eyes wide open. At night, he wanted the bottom as if it were a warm bed. He'd lay there, sort of dreaming, his eyes gray and dim and thoughtless. For months, he came back to her the way a critic or lover can build a whole life on the long study of one great work. I don't know why he stopped. Maybe it was when he first noticed me, the face above my hand, feeding, for sometimes when I'd set the food on top, he'd still watch me eye to eye, as if saying, food isn't enough. Once when I bent, he jumped up out of the water and kissed my lips. What is a fish's kiss like? You'd think it would be cold, slimy, but it was quick, nippy, hard. Maybe it was just what I expected. For all our fears of touch, it takes so long to learn how to take in. When he stopped coming to the top, I guess I did all the wrong things. The fish medicine that smelled, measured carefully for his ounce of weight, for his gills worked so hard, and he lay still, tipped over slightly like a dead boat. How do you stop the hurt of having to breathe? After I took him to the middle of the yellow bridge, right near the Andy Warhol Museum, I had put a paper towel in a painted egg and laid him in it. And at the top, I opened the casket and emptied him out into the water. I think this is the last one. Telly Redux. Sharon asked me if I have a picture of little fishy Telly. I wish I had taken his picture, but in those days some part of my heart was still unswimmingly cold. And as much as I loved Telly, I couldn't imagine carrying a fish's picture in my wallet or putting one in a gold frame on the same mahogany shelf with my grandson. All I have today is the Telly in my heart, a shimmery thinking in red veils. I remember his swishy tail, a magisterial emblem of the living God. In heaven, we will swim through clouds and spheres of wonder far beyond this unpardoning glass of water. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I love you guys. I truly love you. I truly love you. I got one more thing. I meant to tell you all this. I'm going to give you an assignment. When I was nervous, I called Sonia Sanchez. And this was probably about 10 months ago I started. And, oh, God, she knows so much. She knows so much history, and she'll just tell you a billion things that she remembers. And it's just, you can't believe it. But anyway, at the end of the conversation, she said to me that every morning, and this is the part I want you to listen to, every morning she gets up and she writes a haiku before she gets out of bed. And she sets her intention for the day. Okay? So I started doing that. I must admit, I don't always do it before I get out of bed. But, you can change it a little bit, but not too much. But I do write a haiku every day. And I set my intention. And I really think I wouldn't have been writing these things I read tonight. Because after a while, it sort of opens you up. So I'm telling you, would you try this for me? Write a haiku in the morning and set your intention for the day, and then let me know if you like it. But it'd take about a year, okay? Maybe at the next AWP. Thank you.